Today on the Diz List, we share our Disney origin stories.
Welcome to the Diz List, the podcast that lists everything in Walt Disney World. I'm Nick.
And I'm Rob, and welcome to episode 93, where we share our Disney origin stories.
We've gained a significant number of listeners and followers over the last few months, and so we thought it'd be fun to kind of give you a sneak peek. So this episode is gonna kind of do two things: give you a sneak peek into what our Patreon episodes can be like, because both of these, what you're gonna hear in the second half of this show, is actually a compilation of two Patreon episodes we did, but it also kind of introduces you a little bit more in depth to us.
Yeah, to kind of get our background, because, I mean, as you'll hear, do we ruin it now? I'm the spoiler. You know I am.
I think we got to make them listen.
Okay.
We can.
All right.
What we can do
no
is
spoilers. See, I've been better at asking you first before I spoil this stuff.
I also think
this is what I'm known for.
But I do think that we could maybe in the top half of the show, because we didn't talk about it in our individual episodes. One thing we can kind of talk about here is our origin, like the origin of the Diz List.
Yeah.
So back in 2020, world shut down, everything's changed, and Rob's family and my family were part of a closer circle that we were like, okay, we can still, they were a part of our circle. You know, everybody had that circle of people that was like, we know you're doing the right thing. You know, we're doing the right thing. We're going to keep each other healthy. And we started doing weekly fires.
Yep.
And we would sit around the fire and chat, and kids would play.
Yep.
And, you know, it was all just a fun way for our families to not look at the same people, talk to the same people, stuck inside.
And be outside. And
yeah. It was a really good way. In fact, there were a couple times when it was raining and it was like, we can't do a fire. So we sat in our garage or like did whatever.
Yeah.
And
we followed the rule. I remember at first too, we were all 6 feet apart.
Yeah.
We were following the rules, but at the same time trying to just have
some
little bit of human connection.
Yeah, normalcy.
We weren't at school. You know, we weren't teaching. Our kids weren't at school. They weren't seeing people on a regular basis.
Yeah.
So
that's
we were kind of where this all started.
We were just sitting around fires, and we would almost every single time that we were sitting around a fire, the conversation eventually would turn to Disney. And we would joke, we should start a podcast. Ha ha ha. And then
I said, well, I have all the equipment for it. What I've been doing over COVID, you know, everyone kind of has a thing that they did during COVID where they, you know, well, I got really into crochet, or I got really into this. Well, I got really into recording, because another part of my background is I've been playing in bands for years and years, and I have, well, can you count? Nick's going to count all the albums on the wall here. How many albums have I recorded since the 90s?
37.
37 albums. Yeah, that one's accurate too, because that is the most recent.
Yeah.
So I've 37 different albums I've recorded or been part on. So I decided, you know what? I've done plenty of recording. I'm going to teach myself how to do it. So I have an Apple computer and got all the different software and microphones. First, we had different microphones.
Yeah.
You can get into that, because that's actually Nick's expertise. So we had microphones, and I thought, you know, we could probably do this. We have the equipment. I kind of know what I'm doing a little bit.
Yeah. Yeah. And I was like, are you serious? And then we started like workshopping names, like what we could do it about. And what came first? I think first was I said to you, we got to have a hook. Yeah.
We can't just talk about Disney every week,
right,
which we end up doing sometimes, but that's fine. I said, we got to have something different than what everyone else is doing out there. And then I remember saying to you, and I think you finished the thought, but I said, you know what I like is I like watching YouTube videos where it's like, okay, these are the 10 best Metallica albums, and I want to know what the number one is, and I have to watch it all the way through to find out what they picked first. And, and like Rolling Stone does that all the time. Mm-hmm. And then I think you took it further, and I think you came up with the name. and you sort of finished it, right?
Yeah, I said, well, what if we? I mean, so you want to list things? What if we just call it the Disney list or like the Diz list? And then that stuck.
Yeah.
And for some reason, our wives weren't around the fire at that point.
Yeah.
I remember them coming back and like, oh, we got the name for the podcast.
Yeah, we got the name now.
And they're like, wait, you guys are serious?
We're like, yeah, what the heck else are we going to do?
Yeah. So that's kind of where the podcast was born.
Yeah. And the only other thing I remember we talked about too was you're a big fan of the social media. Well, they're kind of Disney bloggers and YouTubers called the Diz.
Right.
And we were worried, was that too close? And we asked a couple people,
Yeah.
and their opinions were, no, it's an abbreviation for Disney.
Right.
So I don't think it's too close or too much associated. I don't think we've really heard that either.
No.
We do recognize that their name is
the Diz.
Yeah, and that's fine, and we think it's good, and we
I
made
think they're
it our
called
own
the Diz
thing.
Unlimited now.
Okay.
But, yeah, so that's kind of like the origin of this podcast.
Yeah.
In the second half of the show, you're going to hear Rob's origin story and my origin story, and we kind of called them villain origin stories. So you hear that joke. These are old Patreon episodes, and I say old. They're a few months ago that we put together, and the reason we did that is because Rob's going to be away, just like I was away when over the February break. He's going away for spring break, so he's going to have a lot of fun, and we thought this is a good way to share something we've already done, so you still get an episode, but also share something I think is important and kind of an introduction if you've been wondering what is up with these two guys.
And two, we talk about Patreon a lot and how we have that as an option. And if you're rolling your eyes, yeah, you guys talk about it all the time. Well, here's what it's like.
Yeah.
I mean, we're a little more unhinged.
Yeah. And the other thing is too, is like you can be a Patreon member without being a paid subscriber.
Yeah.
So that's the other thing, is like, it's just another place to kind of contact us. I will say that if there's any date specific things talked about in there, or if I'm like, oh yeah, next week we're going to be doing this, like, just understand that these are older episodes that we took and stitched together into one. I tried to catch anything that we talked about that was like date specific, and pull that out when I edited this particular episode. So I think we should be good, but we think this will be a fun one for you, and we're excited. My quick check on my Patreon app says that this week is brought to us by Sarah T.
Cool. Thanks, Sarah.
Really appreciate that. And we're going to head off to the halftime show now. When we come back, we'll be back in time listening to our villain origin stories.
We're back.
Did you hear the story about the villain origin? So,
are we going to do a villain origin story today?
We actually are. We're doing a series, 2 back-to-back, villain origin story. We're going to do... I was like,
who's this episode's villain? Is it you or me?
I think you're the villain.
Okay.
I'm the interviewer.
Okay.
All right. We had talked about how we don't really like... We talk about some stuff on the podcast or in general about who we are and where we came from and why we like Disney, but it's not been like, we haven't had the full treatment, the whole Boba Fett treatment. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Book of Boba Fett. We haven't had that treatment.
Oh, I got a book of Boba Fett right here.
All right, so we're gonna give the Book of Boba Fett treatment to Rob today.
All right.
So
mine's a long one though.
His Disney villains origin story. So I want to know, because like you know mine, because you have known me for my whole Disney addiction.
Yes.
I have not known you for your whole Disney. I mean, it would. Yeah. I didn't go to elementary school with you, so it would be hard for me to. I mean, one of our colleagues did though. That's kind of weird.
That is true. He did.
So
2.
Yeah,
his wife also.
Yeah, you're right. Yeah. So I want to know the Rob Disney origin story.
Okay. So I don't know how far back I should go. So
the beginning. It's the origin, dude.
My father grew up in Pennsylvania, and his parents divorced, and this is not as normal as you'd think. Gosh, I would say this is maybe the 50s or the 60s when this happened. And my dad and my grandfather moved, moved up to New York, and my grandma and my aunt to split up the kids. It's, very rare. And so my grandma and my aunt moved down to Orlando.
Okay.
Because we already had family down there.
Boys went with boys, girls went with girls.
It's very, very interesting.
This is legit a freaking villain origin story. Okay.
But when I was growing up, that just seemed normal to me. That's what you did when people were divorced.
Okay.
And I learned later that that's not quite as. No, I mean, it happens. I'm sure there's people listening that are. Oh yeah, I know somebody who that happened to. So we would go down to Orlando every year to see my grandmother, my dad's mom, and my aunt, who I had cousins and everybody down there. So we would go every year, maybe twice, usually just once. And that's kind of how that all started. And I had some relatives who worked there. Uncle Jimmy, I've mentioned, is my dad's cousin. So Uncle Jimmy worked, he was one of the people that helped repair the animatronics. So he was in the military, and Disney recruited him because in the military he was kind of like the machinist that would build those little parts. Mm-hmm. So he knew, like, he was kind of the main guy for Hall of Presidents.
Yeah, you've said before, they're like,
they will call him. They'll be like,
Abraham Lincoln fell down.
Jimmy, you gotta get over here. Abraham Lincoln just took a spill, so he would come running. But at that time, I'll say, I'm sure I went in the late 70s. I was born in 77, and I went when I was real little, but I don't really remember it as much until the early 80s. But Uncle Jimmy would get tickets because he worked there, and you know, all the family members would go all the time, and they were like, wait for New York family to come down. So we'd come down, and they would give us tickets, and it would be my mom and my dad and my sister and I. Sometimes my aunt would come, but not always. And we would go, and that's kind of what started that off. We would go, not necessarily every year. My estimate here is that between the time I was really little and probably by the time I graduated, I would say probably 10 trips.
So let me ask you, do you remember a non-Epcot Disney World?
No. It all is kind of the same timeline up until like
I mean, you
middle
clearly
school and high
remember
school.
obviously like non-MGM / Hollywood Studios and non-Animal Kingdom.
Yep.
But I just didn't know if you remember going just to, like, where Epcot wasn't even a thing.
I remember new Epcot. I remember new MGM Studios. I remember what MGM Studios used to be. Cool. Like the backlot tour.
Yeah.
Because the thing I loved on the backlot tour, you'd think it was like the whole car stunt show thing, but it wasn't. It was seeing the Golden Girls house that was there. It's part of the tour.
That
I don't know why it stuck in my head.
Why have I not gotten to see the Golden Girls house? I
don't
love
know.
the Golden Girls.
Well, you can rewatch that tour and see it. It's part of it.
I can rewatch the Golden Girls instead. It's even better.
I think the house next door was the house from Empty Nest. Remember that show?
Oh my gosh!
It was the spinoff.
Wow,
from Golden Girls.
that is a throwback.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I need to know so you didn't stay on property, right? You stayed with family.
Almost always stayed with family. No, always. My other aunt and uncle on my mom's side, so my cousins from Albany, they would go down sometimes too, and then we would meet up and we'd do our vacations at the same time. And this is interesting because I figured this out recently. We went to their resort and hung out at their resort, and I'm trying to figure out what it was. And I did a little research and found out that the resort was in the area where Saratoga Springs and like Old Key West is, but I think it's a Saratoga Springs area before they turned it into Disney University. Are you familiar with all those things?
Yeah, but like, what the heck was it before then?
Well, the ironic part about all of this, when I found out that it's the Saratoga Springs area, is that my family who stayed there is from Albany, a stone's throw from Saratoga Springs.
Yeah, I mean,
but I don't think it wasn't called that then. But we would go and hang out there and play at the Disney Resort.
That's interesting.
And we would go do the special breakfast. That's when we went to, it wasn't Ohana. I remember eating breakfast on the riverboat.
I think we've posted a picture of that before.
There's a picture with us with characters, and I'm wearing like a Hawaiian lei around my neck.
Yeah,
it was a character breakfast that they used to do there.
That was when little Robbie was around.
Yes, yeah, little Robbie. I have some funny notes about that too. So So I teach art, and I like to draw. I'm an artist, even though I talk about being a musician all the time too. But I
musician
like
is artist.
Yeah,
I mean, like
it's all part of the same.
It's all about
thing.
creative outlets.
So when I was little, I just started drawing Mickey, and I think it was age 2 or 3 that my mom would start showing everybody my drawings and like, look, this is Mickey Mouse. This kid can draw Mickey Mouse at age 2 or 3. So it was something I always liked to do, and draw was something I was always good at.
We're required by law to call him Steamboat Willie.
Well, it's okay. We're not making millions of dollars off of this podcast, so I don't think Disney's going to go and try to shoot us down.
All right.
Who knows? And then when I was in preschool, I don't know if I think I've told you the story before. When I was in preschool, I had this doll, and it's in the room somewhere.
Oh, it's
it says Mickey Mouse Power.
Yeah.
And it says Mickey Mouse stuffed animal. And I loved Mickey Mouse and the stuffed animal so much that when it was time to take like a school picture, and they did like regular school pictures in preschool, I wore a suit, like a tweed suit coat.
Oh, man.
I'll find this picture and send it to you. It's a tweed suit coat, but I'm holding Mickey Mouse. And they were like, son, do you want to put the doll down? I'm like, no.
Okay. So I'm having a hard time right now. The only reason I'm trying to control myself is because we're on air. If I was not recording right now, I would be losing my mind laughing at you. You had a tweed suit on with it. Like, I can picture the kid. Like, I can totally picture this. Rob is up and around the studio looking for this thing.
I know it's in the room somewhere.
He says he knows it's in the room. It's all I can say is I can't imagine the Life Touch worker who was like, sorry, sir, son, there's a purple star background behind you already.
My mom can find it in an instant. She can find all those pictures so quick.
That's funny.
The only two I can see in the room right now is the Figment from either that when it opened or one of the following years after. I think Imagination was a opening attraction, the original version with Dreamfinder and everything. I got it then. And then Big Al, they don't even make that anymore.
That Big Al is old.
It's got that huge, it's a plastic face.
Yeah, it's got the old school like plastic rubber or whatever face on it.
It's huge. It's like a 2-foot plush. It's enormous.
Yes, like nowadays that'd be like a $70 plush at Disney.
And like it's funny that I still have that, and I never wanted to get rid of it.
You know, I remember plushes like that, and you'd grab them by the legs and swing them like in a pillow fight.
Oh, I did.
Purposely, because the rubber face would hit like your sibling.
You lift up his arm. There's a big old hole right there. I'm not going to get up and show you, but he's seen some
we told you it
action,
was the villain's origin.
Yeah.
So, like, when that was your... Did you ever take a break, I guess, is my question. Like, did you ever... Okay.
2.
Okay.
Yep. So, in high school, I don't think our parents took us to Disney as much. Our, meaning my sister and I. My sister Katie is she likes Disney too, but she hasn't gone as much because my niece it's hard for her to go. She's a person with special needs, so it's difficult for her to go. At some point, we'll go with her. She's a sweetie. But we kind of took a break through high school, and that's when Universal opened. So we became kind of like Universal was our trip.
Gotcha.
Through middle school and high school. This is a real throwback. So there was a TV show on Nickelodeon. Did you watch Nickelodeon?
Of course. Okay. You can't do that on television.
So my sister and I loved this. It was kind of like before 90210 came out, and it was called 15.
Oh, I don't know that one.
So 15 had a little known star on the show named Ryan Reynolds.
What?
I didn't meet Ryan Reynolds. That's not, well, when I was at Comic-Con, I was in the same room as him, but that has nothing to do with this. So you could do a tour of the Nickelodeon studios, and they were filming 15, and the stars, if they were around, they would come out and you could meet them. And I got my picture taken, my sister and I, with the stars of 15. So that was cool. So like Universal kind of became the hip thing around that time.
Yeah, no, you're not wrong.
I love
remember
Jaws. I love the Back to the Future ride. I wish all that stuff was still there.
E.T.
E.T. I think it's still there.
Yeah, but the E.T. ride, I'm saying,
Yeah.
did you do that one? Yeah.
Oh yeah, it was E.T.
Kong.
King Kong. Yeah, we actually have. There's video of our trip, which you'll laugh. Seeing me in the trip is pretty hilarious. But we did Universal for a while, and then when I went off to college, we didn't do Disney very often.
Gotcha.
And then in 2002, it was a year after I met my now wife. She was my girlfriend at the time, and I kind of brought her down there to meet family. And shortly after that, we were, living together and then engaged and all that stuff. So the first time we went together or went to Disney was 2002, and part of me was like, okay, can this girl handle Disney? What, is she gonna be okay with this? And
Yeah.
she was. She loved Epcot, and she went a couple times when she was little, not as often as we did, but so she liked it. So the big gap. So there's two. The one big gap is when we would go to Universal
Yeah.
through high school
Yeah.
and then college. Went one more time in 2002. Giant gap into 2014
Okay.
because the kids were young.
Yeah.
And we decided, okay, they're too young. As much as I want to go, like, we're not going to go yet. And then the time was finally right. And we took them in 2004. And the rest of the
14?
2014. My daughter was 7. My son was 5. So if you do the math, 10 years ago plus 1.
So almost exactly the age group. So my daughter was 4. No, my daughter was 3 going on 4. Yeah, it's almost exactly the same time.
Yeah, and that's a fine time too. It works.
I mean, you can go younger, and
Yeah.
this is not you saying like, oh, we didn't want to go because they were too young. Look, if you live closer and you can get there,
Do you do it?
do it.
Well,
But,
especially
like,
if you have a
flying,
huge family.
like,
You don't want to.
going on a plane with like a 2-year-old.
Yeah.
Oh my gosh.
Well,
like
you
it's
drive
so-
too, I guess.
Yeah, but like we went the same age group as what you're describing with your kids. So
My only other thing that I'll add is it was always my dream to go down to Orlando and live in Orlando and work for Disney. Always.
and
Yeah.
what I guess my question is, if you could pinpoint 1 or 2 reasons why Disney, what about it, right? We have theme parks.
Uh-huh.
You grew up you grew up just west of or just east of here.
Yep.
And just west of us is a theme park called Darien Lake.
Yep.
And you could also drive toward Albany near your cousins and go to like
Great
Escape,
Escape,
which was at one point a Six Flags,
Enchanted
and
Forest.
Enchanted Forest and Old Forge.
Uh-huh.
So you had theme parks. What was it about Disney that made you say, "Yep, this is it. I'm done"?
Well, I didn't want to go to any. Well, I guess we did Darien Lake, but I didn't really. Once you go to Disney, like everything else just is,
yeah,
child's play.
you're not wrong.
Yeah.
You're not wrong.
But
Yeah.
I guess the two things the reason why I wanted to end up there, number one is I love the weather. I love it. I love the hot year round. I'm fine with it. Like,
But we complain
love
about
it.
the hot all the time.
yeah, but it's different.
I think
I
if
don't
you
know what
lived
it
there,
is.
it'd probably be different.
Yeah.
I think so. Yeah.
I could definitely live there or live there part of the year. I mean, I can't make that decision. That's a decision I make with my wife.
Well, in
someday,
20 years, we can release episode 2000 something.
Yep.
And we can talk about this.
Yeah.
Yeah. No, I'm excited. Like some of the stuff you said tonight, I had never heard. So like
Yeah.
the getting your picture taken with your Mickey Mouse
Yeah.
plush.
I'll text my mom, and
That's funny.
my mom will get it, and I'll send it to you. You can add that to the you can put up on the Patreon or whatever you want to do.
Yeah, I'll
with
put it on. I'll keep it to Patreon, so we don't have to.
Or you could post it public and say, "Hey, look at this great stuff that our Patreon listeners get that nobody else gets."
Yeah, that's
join
true.
our Patreon and find out why Rob is holding Mickey Mouse power in this picture.
So I want to know, like, I would love for that Life Touch worker to like be like, "Hey, remember taking this picture for this kid? Here's the music he's created." And like just drop some Union and Achilles on him. I'm sorry, like if you don't know, like Rob's in pretty hardcore bands, and so like that would be just hilarious because it definitely is a juxtaposition of blacks and whites.
Yeah.
That is like beyond belief.
Make a great album cover.
It would be, actually.
Yeah.
No, thank you so much for sharing all that stuff with us. I really appreciate that. Always getting the origin story, and we joked that it was a villain origin story, but that's because how they do stuff in the Marvel and Star Wars universe now. But that was awesome. I was excited to hear some of those things.
Well, and then part of the story is this, and then I'm hoping part of the story is, hopefully living down there part of the
next
time.
chapter, right?
And I'll tell you, there's always a part of me, always my whole life, that wanted to be a jungle skipper on the Jungle Cruise. Always.
I think that maybe at your age, you might need to be working in the restaurant.
You might be right.
But
Because they're usually younger kids, but
yeah,
I don't know. If I have a stiff cup of coffee before I do it, I can talk.
No, really?
I mean, if you were to ask me 20 years ago, what's your dream job? I would say, working at Jungle Cruise.
Look, as long as they give you a good microphone instead of one of those crappy ones, I'd be riding. O2H.
Yeah, that's a T-shirt design too.
It is. All right. Well, thank you so much, guys, for listening. It's been a great time. If you haven't checked out magicmerch.art, please do so. Next week, you're going to hear the origin story of Nick the villain. So stay tuned for that one, because that one is not quite as, I don't know, like, it's definitely more villain-like. Like, it's like getting dunked into a toxic wasteland. That's for sure.
Well, mine was just a little longer, but
yeah. Welcome, everybody. This week, Rob's gonna interview me.
We're gonna do your superhero origin story.
To your villain. I'm the superhero to your villain. I don't know.
Why not?
I think I'm more of a villain. I said that last week.
It depends on the day.
Well, no, but I said last week mine's more of a villain's origin story, because I was like,
yeah.
Because what I kind of talked about was like how how villains sometimes are like dropped into like toxic waste and like they come out as a villain.
Yes.
Like that's kind of what happened to me. Like I was normal before.
You were.
Yeah.
And then you got dropped into toxic waste.
Yeah. Yeah. That's kind of what happened, right? I mean, so we've told the story slightly before that like I had no real Disney experience.
So I think where we'll start with current version of Disney, Nick, is your conversation with me, but we're going to go before that, and then we'll lead up to the Rob and Nick conversation that we talk about.
You want to go like before, so like...
So what is your first, and is this high school trip to Epcot was the first?
In 8th grade, my high school did this thing called... it was like we went to the Museum of Science in Science and Industry in Tampa. And it was like our trip that it was a science trip. I forget what they called it, but space exploration or whatever. But instead of going to like space camp where you would go to like Cape Canaveral, we went to Tampa, and there they had like a whole thing where you learned how to do the stuff. It was pretty in depth. It was detailed, and it was certainly something that was enjoyable and fun for a science person. But then we went to Orlando for 2 days, and we did SeaWorld behind the scenes tour. Cool, whatever, is what it is. And then we split. Our fun day was a half day at Epcot and a half day at Universal. Half days.
Oh my God.
If you were to pick a park that was open then, you probably should have went with MGM.
Yeah.
Not with Epcot.
Well, for a bunch of high school kids.
Well, 8th grade.
Eighth grade,
yeah.
Right.
But I think the reasoning behind it, honestly, was we need to have a reason why we're spending this kind of money. Like it was one of those educational trips. We need to have a reason why we're spending that kind of money.
Well, then how do you explain Universal? There's zero educational portions there.
That's a good point. I don't know.
I mean, Epcot, that makes sense.
Yeah.
Because there's probably, well, I don't know if I would say the most, because Animal Kingdom has a ton of educational aspects now.
Yeah. And here's the crazy part is that like we did Universal early in the morning, went and did that, and then we did Epcot like in the evening. Most of our time was spent like waiting for fireworks. We didn't even like really do much. I remember eating at the American Pavilion.
Okay.
That's where before it was Sam Eagle eating in that little cafeteria area. That's what I remember about Epcot. That's it. I remember that and fireworks.
I
don't
remember just
anything
being a
else.
hamburger place, right?
Yeah. And I remember the ball, Epcot ball. We didn't do any rides, nothing. Like didn't go like it. That was it. That was my experience with Epcot.
Really?
Yeah.
You didn't even do any rides?
No.
Wow.
Because the rides were saved for Universal, man. We got to do 3 rides over there.
Well, you walk in and you don't
We did
see a roller coaster.
Yeah, we did Jaws over at Universal.
Best.
We did King Kong.
Did you do Back to the Future?
And we did E.T.
Okay.
And those were the 3 I think that I remember doing.
Okay,
I take it
that's
back.
a big loop.
We did Ellen's, not Ellen's. The Body Wars. We did Body Wars. At Epcot.
Okay.
Yeah, that was our ride.
Wow.
I mean, hey, it was teaching us all about health.
See, that's interesting though, because you did get to experience one of those way old school attractions.
Yeah, but I remember just being disappointed that like this is my first time at Disney. This is what we're doing.
Yeah.
But anyway, that was my very first experience. I was in 8th grade, and I never was against Disney. We just weren't a Disney family. Flash forward to later in my life, I always kind of wanted to go there. But
who suggested it? Was it you or your wife? Was like, hey, we should do a Disney trip with the kids. They're the right age.
I think we had always kind of talked about wanting to do a Disney trip, and then we were wanting to hold off until my daughter was old enough to really enjoy it. I understand if you are local, like the people who say, well, they can. Who cares about what they remember? It's what you remember. I agree with you. I 100% agree with you.
Sure.
Make those memories. But making those memories on the kind of dime that it would cost to fly a kid down, and it just wasn't worthwhile for me, especially considering and you know this, that was our one and only trip. Mm-hmm. We're going once in a lifetime, going to go do it big. And that was my toxic waste bucket.
So
dunking, whatever.
I'm going to lead us up to the famous Robin Nick conversation here, which I remember exactly where it was. It was in the hallway right outside my classroom.
Yeah. I had first period off, and we were just chilling, talking.
But before that, this isn't about me, but this just leads up to it. There was a time where I did a Disney trip with my family, and I got in a little bit of trouble. So it's a very long story, a story for another time. But I ended up going to Disney on like a weekend, and there were some people that weren't happy about that. I'll leave it at that. So I sort of became known throughout the school as the Disney guy, and also the guy who got in trouble. But it became pretty well known that, hey, this guy goes to Disney a lot. I'll go talk to him.
Well, we were friends, but we hadn't talked about Disney because it wasn't something we did.
No, because we have other common interests, you know, music and sports and all kinds of stuff. So
and I don't really remember how it came up, but I was like, yeah, we're going to Disney, blah blah blah, and I was telling you all the stuff we're doing. You're like, wow, that's a lot of stuff.
Yeah,
and I was like, well, it's the only time I'm going to go. I'm going to do it right. I'm going to do it big. It's the only time we're going to go. And you laugh.
I love this story because it's one of the times I'm right and you're wrong.
Yeah, you flat out that might have been the same laugh you gave me.
Yes.
And you're like, no, you're not.
Yeah.
This is not the one time.
Nope.
And I thought, no way. Like, whatever. I'm doing it big. We're going to go. We're going to get it done. And then, because there's other things I want to do. Like, I want to do Universal. We want to go to Hawaii. We want to go to this place.
Do you remember what you told me? I remember what you told me. What? Why it's a one-time thing.
No, go ahead.
You told me you wanted to go to all the cities in the U.S. and go to every baseball stadium.
Yeah. I still want to do that.
Yeah, right. You can do both. And I thought that was cool. I was like, oh, okay.
Yeah, we want to do that.
I said, but you're still going to go back to Disney.
I mean, heck, on the way home from our trip together, we flew home, then we went back down to Baltimore and went to a soccer game. I'm not opposed to doing multiple trips in a year.
Yeah.
I was convinced that there's nothing about this place that is so special that I need to do it every year for the rest of my life. But I was also convinced that there's enough special about it to invest the amount of money that a once-in-a-lifetime trip will cost.
Well, I think you also, another big part of it, just kind of looking from an outsider, is you want your family to have something special and have fun. And I think you saw how happy it made well, you went with 4 other family members other than you that time,
Right.
but just your 2 kids and your wife just loved it so much, and so did you. And I think that's a big selling point is that they loved it so much. I wonder, let's think of it from a what if origin story. If your wife and kids hated it,
Oh no, we wouldn't go if my kids hated it.
right?
But I think here's the thing. I'm not a huge travel. The reason the baseball thing appeals to me is like we can go to that city, go to a game, and be out of there. We can do it in 2 days. I don't like traveling. I know that sounds weird for a guy who's like hosting basically a travel podcast. I'm not a big travel person because I don't like not feeling comfortable. Okay. When I do travel now, I'm a big fan of Airbnb or VRBO because like those places, like at least you're staying in a home. I don't like the feeling of living out of a suitcase in a hotel. I don't like those things. But when you go to Disney, they do such a great job to make you feel comfortable and make it feel like you're traveling the world. Meanwhile, you're staying in these nice accommodations with cast members who really truly care about what they do. And we can go back year after year, see something new every year, and still, be comfortable. And I think that's a big reason why things change. Now, I mean, they changed in a hurry because I got back and I was like, oh, that's problematic.
Well, this will lead my next question
Yeah.
here is when did you decide I'm all in and I'm buying DVC and we're going every year? When did that happen and how?
So before we went, we had done a deep dive because my wife and I are both planners and really wanted to like know what we need to do. So we watched a lot of YouTube and we started watching this show that also had a DVC like branch that did Disney Vacation Club stuff. And I was watching those shows and I was like, wow, that's kind of cool. Like, that's interesting. And that's what actually led us to rent because that first year we went, instead of purchasing from Disney, we rented points from an individual and we rented at Poly. And so we stayed at the Polynesian. We had a Lakeview room. We had the very last Lakeview room on the top floor of Maria. So it's all the way toward the
Closest to the boats?
closest to TTC. Yep, and closest to the boats. It provides a great view. Also quick to get to the transportation. So it was a great spot. And I fell in love with the room and I was like, wow, this is crazy. And I was thinking to myself, I'm like, wait, so you're telling me this guy rented to me and didn't lose money and I paid that for this room when it was actually cheaper than the room we had been looking at, which was at Port Orleans. And that's when I was like, oh, I've got to, if once I decided we were going to go back, it was like, at the very least, I'm renting. I don't think I really truly had decided I was going to buy until somewhere around end of March 2020. Now we all know what happened in March 2020. And we were coming off of our first trip was in that prior summer. End of March 2020, we already knew that we were going to plan another trip. We were planning it with my mother this time. And the points in the first few weeks of the pandemic, the Disney Vacation Club market, the bottom fell out. And it was like, it dropped like, I want to say 25% or more. The prices dropped.
Everyone kind of panicked, right?
Right. And then shortly after I purchased, it actually rebounded and did really well. Like it was higher than it ever had been. But I had, unfortunately, in the spring of 19, I had lost my father. And so I did have some money from an insurance policy that he had that I didn't want to use it for like boring stuff. My dad was not a boring guy. My dad loved family. And so I kind of threw it to my wife. I said, hey, I'm thinking about doing this with that insurance money. I'm thinking about using some of it toward a DVC contract. And she was like, you sure? I was like, yeah, my dad loved family and would love that he's basically afforded us the ability to go on a family vacation for the rest of my life, because I'm not going to live until the end of that contract, I don't think, but maybe. So that's when we started looking, was in March, and then a really good contract came up, and I was like, holy cow, I'm going to put an offer in on this, and it got accepted, and lo and behold, by the end of the school year that year, when we were stuck at home, I had closed and had a deed registered to me in Orange County, Florida.
Yeah.
So it was crazy how quick it went.
So you're kind of a 0 to 60 fan where you were all in right from the start.
Well, here's the thing. I did the math and I was like, this does not. The points had dropped so cheaply that like it just made sense. Like they were super low. Like you can't get. At the time, they were as low as like what Saratoga was, and it's Poly. It was a really good deal, put it that way. And there was no way for me to like look at it any other way than this is an amazing deal. And I know I can get out of it if I need to. And honestly, it was money that I knew at the worst case scenario, if I can't get out of it, guess what? We have a vacation in Disney until 2067.
Mm-hmm.
So, that's kind of how I looked at it.
That's cool. We've looked at DVC a bunch of times too, and it just seems like everything lined up perfectly for you, and that's great. I'm glad that worked out because we had the opportunity to rent points from you, so that's fantastic.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I think what happened here was when I say, it's like I got dunked in the toxic waste vat. I don't know that if I had not treated it as my one and only trip, this would have happened. If I had said, let's start thinking about doing Disney, and we stayed at the All-Stars, and we did, a 5-day ticket, and we didn't do the fun special stuff like the dessert party for the fireworks, and we didn't do the early entry hard ticket event for Hollywood Studios. We didn't do those things where I saw just how amazingly magical it could be. I don't know that I would have dove deep in. I think I would have been back, but I don't know that I would have been like, so boom, done. But it was like, because I got that treatment right, like that hardcore, like this is everything. We're going to throw it all at you. I think that's what did it. And that's what kind of pushed me over the edge to, yeah, this is going to be something. This is my identity now, which is fine.
Yeah.
And things have changed and things evolve. And now I look at it. What's cool is that like my villain story, my origin story here has now evolved to a spot where it's like, I don't need to go and do those huge trips because I think back and I'm like, I can't believe we planned that much in that one trip. But
you did.
Yeah. But now I know that like if I don't ride something on a year, I'm going to be back. If I don't get to do this, if this restaurant's booked up, if I can't do this, I can't do that. No big deal. We didn't do Via Napoli the last couple of times, but I know I'll be back. I'm going to go there this summer.
It makes for a better, more relaxed trip when you don't feel more stressed that I have to do A, B, and C.
Yeah.
Because you're going back and you can next time.
Yeah. And I think it's cool too, is that like I get to now watch my children and they have something that I didn't have as a kid. Not that my childhood was bad. I'm not saying that. It's more like we didn't have that one steady, like I had friends who were Disney friends, right? Disney family friends. They went to Disney every year. I had those friends. And I was, jealous of them, not because of Disney, but because they had that thing.
They had a thing.
Yeah. And my kids now have that and they enjoy it. And I will say, and I've said this before, like I was always worried that like my kids would grow out of it. And like watching your children and now seeing my son getting, to that middle school age, and it's not changed any at all. I mean, because there's more there than just like the princessy stuff to do. You know what I mean? And they're doing a very good job at, especially now with the acquisitions of Marvel and stuff like that. But
But it's okay even for, a middle school boy or a high school girl the girl can still like the princess stuff. And
oh yeah, I'm not saying they can't.
Middle school boy can still like the little kid stuff because it's kind of the beauty of when you're there is it's just this happy magical place and all that stuff is set aside.
And I don't know if I'm in love with the Disney parks as much as I am with the idea of a place to call home. Mm-hmm. Like it really, like when you go and as a DVC member, they welcome you home. You tap your band in at the park. The ring doesn't turn green. It turns purple or pink, depending on how you look at it. It's RGB versus CYMK.
Magenta.
Yeah, it turns magenta. And then it says, welcome home. And it's in Mickey Mouse's voice. It's just really cool. It's a lot of fun to know that it's your place. You own a part of the magic.
That's cool.
It is very cool. But I don't know. I've really enjoyed it. And look, now we have a Disney podcast. Like, what the heck? I went from never having been in 2019, July 2019 going, to launching a podcast with my friend in 2022. Like less than 3 years later.
Yeah.
and owning a boatload of DVC points and always looking for more. So if you happen to be selling, no, I'm just kidding.
Maybe not.
Yeah, only half kidding. So anything else you want to know about or you have a question at all or no?
No, I mean
you know it, but
I do. And if there's anything we did forget, our patrons who are listening, obviously they're great people and we appreciate them. Most of them do send us messages.
Yeah.
And they send us requests. And if
Yes.
there was something left out but wait, Nick, what about this? Or if you listen to my previous episode and you want to ask me something, please do.
yeah, I do think it's just kind of cool how like I used to geek out about like, oh my gosh, this person, this YouTuber, and now we like have friends who do that. Like some of our patrons, like Rob's listening right now. It's like, that's so like back in the day, he would have been the guy I would have been listening to. And now we have people who listen to us.
It's great
for advice. It's so cool. But thank you guys so much because you're a big part of what I love about Disney too.
Yeah, it's not lost on us how cool it is that people listen to us and they want to hear our stories. So
absolutely,
we appreciate it.
Even if they are a villain origin story being dunked in a vat of toxic waste.
Now, do you want to accidentally do the outro like I do occasionally?
Yeah. So we just finished recording a regular episode, and Rob did the outro. And where he normally comes in and says, we'll see you real soon. I said, and Rob just did the Patreon version, and we'll see you real soon.
So I had to go back in and edit. And this is part of the beauty of why you're a Patreon subscriber. You get to find out all this cool stuff that nobody else gets to know.
Yeah.
I goofed up again. No, not again. I don't know if I've ever done that.
You've never done that.
One. Yeah.
But then again, we've also never had a situation where we lost all of our audio. So that was fun.
Yeah. Well, we thought we did. Luckily, we.
No, you'll get a regular episode, I promise.
Yeah, we had a quick panic that we hit the playback button and we could see. So like when you record, it creates this thing called a waveform, which is like this visual representation of sound. And we could see that, so we knew it was there. But when we played back, we heard nothing. It wasn't muted. So we quickly were doing a Google search. Okay, well, how do we fix this?
Yeah, literally no answers.
And
I had that happen too.
I went right back to the program and hit play, and then it magically worked.
Yeah.
Whatever. Idea. Anyway.
It is what it is. I blame it on Apple.
All right, I'm going to end it the right way here.
Okay,
so
sounds good.
It's been a great, big, beautiful tomorrow, and tomorrow is just a list away.
Tune in next time, and we'll see you real soon.